Well, hello and good morning from Longyearbyen. After a long journey, we finally arrive at the top of the world. Upon our arrival in Longyearbyen, the fjord is shrouded in clouds, while the silhouette of Longyearbyen slowly emerges from the Arctic haze. Not a postcard-perfect scene today. No sun, no blue sea, and that's precisely what makes this arrival so magical. As our ship slowly approaches Longyearbyen, it feels like we're arriving at the very edge of the world. But we are not alone here. Look over there, the Sea Venture. We know the Sea Venture very well. The ship is the former Bremen from Hapag-Lloyd, and guess what? The Bremen was our very first cruise ship, and we even sailed to Antarctica on that tiny ship. Can you imagine it, the little Bremen in the Drake Passage? I could tell stories you'd never believe. We didn't go on another sea voyage for a long time after that. They still have the Zodiacs to go ashore. But today we are on Svalbard in Longyearbyen, the northernmost town of the world. I admit I have a sweet spot for cold destinations. So let's discover Longyearbyen on foot while it's raining cats and dogs. By the way, today we're not just visiting Longyearbyen, but also taking an excursion to the other side of the fjord, on the Svalbard, and we are really looking forward to that. Longyearbyen is not only the northernmost town of the world, but also the capital of Svalbard. It is located on the Norwegian archipelago of Spitzbergen at 78 north latitude and is currently home to over 2,500 inhabitants. This makes Longyearbyen one of the most fascinating and extreme small towns in the world. The many above-ground pipes you see here are part of a sophisticated supply and disposal system that defies the harsh Arctic conditions. Because the ground here is permanently frozen, pipes cannot be laid underground in the usual way. The pipes transport hot water from the local power plant to the houses to supply the households with drinking water. Parallel pipes carry away the wastewater. The pipes are often built on stilts because the heat from the pipes would thaw the permafrost if they were laid directly on or in the ground. The ground would soften and become unstable, potentially causing buildings to subside. Life at the edge of the world comes with some curious facts and rules. For example, no one is born on Svalbard. All residents moved there at some point. Most of the inhabitants are young, many are Norwegian, and many work in science. There are no specialized medical facilities or hospitals for pregnant women. Expecting mothers have to fly to the Norwegian mainland weeks before their due date to give birth. Furthermore, there is a ban on dying on the island. If a person becomes seriously ill, they must be transported to the Norwegian mainland. While there is a functioning hospital, there is no cemetery for burials, as bodies do not decompose in the permafrost. Then there's the issue of polar bear protection. Anyone leaving the town limits is legally required to carry a firearm for defense against polar bears. Every one of the approximately 300 students at the University Center in Svalbard learns this on their first day. And this rule is not to be taken lightly, as incidents involving polar bears occur repeatedly. All of this is quite overwhelming, just like the landscape that surrounds us here. And another fun fact, there are no cats allowed on Svalbard to protect the Arctic bird populations. When I think of our neighbor's cat, I completely understand. We have now arrived at the World War II Victims Memorial, a historical monument dedicated to the victims of the Second World War in Spitzbergen. The monument was erected by the workers and employees of the large Norwegian mining company Store Norske Spitzbergen Coal Company. It commemorates all the inhabitants of Spitzbergen who lost their lives defending the islands, as well as the local citizens who fell on other fronts of the war between 1940 and 1945. Right next to the memorial stands a historic alarm and signal bell. In the early decades of Longyearbyen, the bell served to warn the settlement. It was rung in extreme emergencies such as major fires, serious accidents in the coal mines, or approaching Arctic storms. During World War II, it served to warn the population and Norwegian soldiers of approaching German warships or air raids. Longyearbyen was founded in 1906 by the American industrialist John Monroe Longyear under the name Longyear City. The settlement served as a workers' camp for his mining company, the Arctic Coal Company. The wooden towers visible throughout Longyearbyen and its surroundings, on the mountain slopes and in the valley, are reminders of Longyearbyen's mining history. They are remnants of a historic coal cableway and are among Svalbard's most recognizable landmarks. We have now arrived at the Svalbard church. Originally, a wooden church stood here, which was erected in just 50 days in the summer of 1921. However, it was completely destroyed in a devastating attack by German warships in September 1943. After the war, a new building was planned. The foundation stone was laid in 1956. The new, distinctive red wooden church was consecrated in August 1958. The church is open to all denominations and serves as an important social and cultural center for people living in the isolation of the Arctic. It features a large community area with a lounge where cultural events, concerts, and so on are regularly held. The church is open 24 hours a day. Life in Svalbard is subject to harsh conditions. First, there is the extreme of the polar night. For 4 months in winter it remains pitch black here. The only light comes from the moon, the stars, and the aurora borealis. In summer it's 4 months of 24 hours of midnight sun, which means the sun never sets. In addition, the climate is highly Arctic and very harsh. The average annual temperature is around -4 degrees Celsius. Despite the harsh conditions, many who come here are bitten by the Arctic bug. Most people move to Longyearbyen to stay for just a season or a year. Instead, many are captivated by the absolute silence, the lack of traffic jams, and the close-knit community of a small town, and end up staying longer. Furthermore, there is practically no crime here. People leave their front doors unlocked and the key in their snowmobiles, so that anyone fleeing a sudden polar bear attack can find immediate shelter. That's what our guide told us, at least. For obvious reasons, we didn't check it out. This is the back of Svalbard Butikken, the northernmost department store in the world and only grocery store in Longyearbyen, but more on that later in the video. We want to venture a little further out of Longyearbyen to experience the landscape and nature. However, the official Svalbard guidelines from the local authorities state that one must never travel outside the marked settlements unarmed or without expert guidance, because there are more polar bears than inhabitants on Svalbard and they are active all year round and can appear anywhere. Therefore, we will only go as far as the official settlement boundary, which is marked by the distinctive polar bear sign. The vast landscape around Longyearbyen is characterized above all by absolute silence and monumental nature. It's fascinating, almost meditative emptiness that will take your breath away and blows your mind. The boundless expanse is virtually devoid of vegetation and completely untouched. Longyearbyen is only 1300 kilometers from the North Pole, and the ground is permanently frozen. Beyond the polar bear sign, the wilderness begins. How we wish we could continue here. We'll probably have to come back again for that. Has the Arctic bug caught us now? What does it take to live here in the silence and vastness of the Arctic? It probably requires above all an extreme adaptability to the polar night and the cold, to the midnight sun when it doesn't get dark. It requires physical and mental resilience, a comfortable home, and above all, friends. The town center is very lively, which is likely due to the tourists visiting Longyearbyen today. Tourism is now an important economic sector, with a focus on Arctic ecotourism and adventure travel. Strict regulations are in place due to the fragile ecosystem. Here, between the supermarket and the tourist information office, stands the famous coal miner, a life-size bronze statue by the artist Björn Tore Skjølsvik. It was erected in 1998-99 to commemorate the miners whose hard work made the existence and development of Longyearbyen possible in the first place. The miner wears the traditional work clothes of the miners, called lump, including a helmet, pick and headlamp. And this is the northernmost department store in the world. It offers a wide selection of groceries, fresh products, cosmetics, electronics, and everything else you might need. You can buy food and drink and, of course, souvenirs. After the end of coal mining, tourism was initially established as an important economic pillar. The Norwegian government now pursues a strategy of strict regulation and limitation in order to protect the sensitive Arctic ecosystem and wildlife. Due to the strict environmental regulations that have been introduced, expedition ships are only allowed to disembark tourists at designated points. Passenger limits apply and strict minimum distances to animals must be maintained. Certifications and stricter guide regulations are also intended to ensure that tours are extremely well controlled. We have a tour booked for this afternoon on a small expedition ship, the Svalbard. But more on that in a future video. We would have liked to visit a cafe or restaurant here in Longyearbyen, but we don't have time for that as we have booked the trip on the Svalbard. See you over there.